Hi, I want to welcome you to this first group experience. In case we haven't met, I'm Mark Hoover, and it's my privilege to be lead pastor of NewSpring Church. I want to talk to you for a few moments about why groups are so important. But before I get into that, I'd like to talk about something even more fundamental. I want to talk to you about community. The word community comes from the same root word as the word common. Have you ever been in a group of people, maybe you were in a room full of people, and yet you said to yourself, I don't have anything in common with these people? Well, that's not a fun experience. Community, on the other hand, is being with people that you have something in common with. And so for a little bit of time, I want to talk to you about the importance of community. The first thing I want to share with you is you were made for community. I believe with all of my heart that we have a Creator who loves us very much, and He made us in His image. He made us with gifts, but He also made us with needs. And one of the deepest cravings in your life and my life is the need for community, to be with a group of people in which you truly have something in common. I learned this lesson the hard way just a few years ago. I've shared my story at NewSpring, how that about 6 years ago, I kind of crashed. I hit the wall. That was a tough time for me. You know, I'd spent my life being a leader. And I was always the adult in the room. I was always large and in charge. I felt comfortable even in some of the most difficult of circumstances. And yet, 6 years ago, I crashed. I didn't see it coming. It happened in 24 hours. At least I thought it happened within 24 hours. But I found myself not wanting to talk to anybody. I found myself deeply filled with anxiety. I mean, truly, I crashed. During that season, I wanted to know what was wrong with me. I didn't know, was it psychological, was it physical, or was it spiritual? And you can imagine being a pastor, I was deeply concerned that something was very spiritually wrong with me. During that season, I had the opportunity to have some interaction with a great psychologist, a psychologist who understood my kind of life and the challenges that I face as a leader. While I was asking him about what could possibly be wrong with me, he suddenly stopped me and he asked me a question. He said, "Who really gets close to you?" And I said, "Who gets close to me? I'm surrounded by thousands of people." And then he asked me as though I had never answered. He said, "Who really gets close to you?" In that moment of integrity and honesty and wanting to be well, I found myself blurting out, "Maybe Mary Alice." You know, I was surrounded by thousands of people, that was true. But in reality, I don't know that I really had community. You know, I used to read stories about mariners sailing over the open ocean who ran out of water, drinking water, and how that they were dying of thirst while they were surrounded by water. Sometimes I think about that metaphor with people who were like me and like so many others today. We're surrounded by people. And in these days of social media, we have all kinds of interaction. But I think we might all ask ourselves that question that my friend, the psychologist, asked me. Who really gets close to you? See, I really believe that God has made us with a need for community, to be with people with whom we have something in common. And you know, that's something that has to be developed. In these last 6 years since I hit the wall, I've developed several networks of community. And I got to tell you, this has been the healthiest season, the most productive season in my life, because as busy as I am, I had to understand that my Creator made me with a need for community. And it's not a matter of how many people are in our lives, it's in who really gets close to us. So the first thing I would share with you tonight is that you were made for community. But here's the second thing. Good things happen in a community. You know, we all want good things to happen in our lives, and I'm sure you do just as I do. I mean, we want to see good things happen. We want to see development. We want to see growth. And we want to be more than we are today. What I've discovered about being part of a community is that good things tend to happen in an exponential way. When I first came to our church almost 32 years ago, I was 28 years old, and even though I was 28, I had had years of experience in leadership. TMI, when I came to our church, I came in what would have been considered a transition. The previous pastor was 35 years older than myself. He had been a professor of mine in college, and he had come to this church in 1978. But he knew he was toward the end of his career. So when he came knowing that he was going to need a successor. And through years of prayer and the church talking about it and Mary Alice and I thinking about it, we came here in 1985. And being part of a transition, when I first came here, I sort of assisted him, and then we were co-pastors, and he actually assisted me for several years. But in that first season, I asked him, what do you want me to do as one of the leaders of our church? He said, I would like for you to teach the 20 to 30-year-old couples. We had something called Sunday school in those days, and it would be kind of like a group. Well, when I heard that, I thought, I've led just about every group that you can imagine on a church campus, but I had never led 20 to 30-year-old couples, so I kind of wondered what it was going to be like. I got really scared, though, when the previous two leaders came to me, and they both looked at me with sympathetic looks and said, we really feel sorry for you. This class has never gone anywhere. I thought, man, what have I gotten myself into? Well, the first day I showed up, there were 23 people in the class. 18 of them were ladies, and 5 were guys. And so I kind of wonder, if it's couples, why do I have 18 ladies and only 5 guys? It didn't take me long to realize most of the guys didn't come. And I got to looking at what I was doing in the class, and I thought, I'm not sure they're going to show up for my teaching. Well, in those days, we had a gymnasium in the church, and I asked them, what goes on in the gymnasium? Well, nothing went on in the gymnasium, so I just decided I was going to have pickup basketball on Monday nights. And I told the guys who wanted to show up, bring a 2-liter bottle of pop, bring your favorite snack. And so we played either 3-on-3 basketball or full court basketball, determined by the size of the group. I sort of discovered how good things happen in community by accident, to tell you the truth. Because there would always be a time when everybody got tired and we were all sweaty and we were getting into the pop and the snacks, and we would sit around on basketballs and sit around on the floor, and that's when all of a sudden the guys who had never been to my Sunday school class began to ask me questions about life. How do you know you're going to heaven? Or maybe they would talk about their families, talk about what was going on in their lives. Do you know, when I look back on that group, it was kind of interesting because we grew from 23 to 125 in a few years, and even today, after 30 plus years, there are a lot of people who are in that class who are now in their 50s. But so much of the community that we still enjoy to this day was formed sitting around on basketballs, the guys that is, and talking about life. I discovered very quickly that there were so many things that could happen in a group that couldn't necessarily happen in a big format. The third important thing about community is that it's in community that you have an opportunity to build real relationships. You know, at NewSpring, we experience a crowd, and good things happen in a crowd too. But you know, we need both. We need both the crowd and we need community. As a pastor, for years, I have gotten together with other pastors at what are often called fellowship meetings. But let me tell you what happens in the average fellowship meeting. Usually, it's in a big auditorium, and somebody is standing up on the stage and talking to all of us while we're sitting there listening, sort of like I do on the weekend at NewSpring. Here's what I've discovered about that kind of situation. You can get information, and very helpful information. And so, while that's very, very important, what I've discovered about that kind of setting is that even though you can get life-changing information, you don't really get to build relationships. Now, a few years ago, I started meeting with about 30 other pastors in Mexico. And we just sat around the room talking about the issues that we faced, sharing with each other, learning from each other. You know what's interesting about that group? Is that we have become best friends. And there hardly is a day that goes by that I don't hear from one of those other leaders as they call to ask for my advice or call to tell me about something that's happened. See, in a crowd setting, you can learn important information, but it's where community takes place that you really build relationships. You know, sitting around as you are tonight, you've yet to unpack what the people around you know and what they can speak into your life and what you can speak into their life. So I just want to share with you what I've learned about community. Once again, the importance of community is that you were made for community, and good things happen in a community, and a community gives you the opportunity to build lasting relationships. And I'm so glad that you're here tonight. And what I'd like to ask you to think about doing right now is I'd like to ask you to share with each other. You're going to see a couple of questions, and it will give you the opportunity to respond to each other and share your own thoughts and get to know each other a little better.